Hey there, Dave Paulides, Can-Am Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video page. We have a big show for you today, and it's a special edition. For the first time ever, we're going to cover one cluster zone in one video. It may take a while, but we're going to cover it. If you notice lately in the news, there's been a lot of talk about UFOs. And it's something that I've been involved with for decades. Since my early days with MUFON that got me involved and interested in the topic. I knew years ago that our government had been following UFO reports and essentially knew that they were hovering around our military for decades. And finally now, through some efforts by some individuals, they've pushed it hard. And there's going to be some release, hopefully this month. But you can see by the videos that are circulating through the news that they've had these for at least 20 to 40 years. And that is the reason I'm going to talk to you about this right here, because I think it all interconnects. So this is a news article out of Fredericton, New Brunswick, and it's from CTV News. It says New Brunswick is redoubling its efforts to find the cause of a baffling neurological disease that has killed 6 and infected 48 others, announcing Thursday, this was June 3rd, that an expert committee will lead the ongoing investigation. The discovery of a potentially new and unknown syndrome is scary, Health Minister Dorothy Shepherd told a news conference. I know that New Brunswickers are concerned and confused about this potential neurological syndrome. And in this part of Canada, this is a big deal. You may not have heard about it. Shepherd also announced that health officials have drafted a new comprehensive questionnaire for patients and their families. The questionnaires, which can take up to 4 hours to complete, will be filled out over the next 6 to 8 weeks. And the new committee has a 4-month schedule to complete a clinical review of every patient's medical records. Part of the committee's mandate is to provide second opinions and to rule out potential causes. We have faith that this diligence will pay off, Shepherd said. Dr. Edward Hendricks, one of the committee's co-chairs and a 9-member group, is facing a tough challenge. There are many diseases that lead to these kind of problems, including Alzheimer's, vascular dementia, and other types of dementia, said Hendricks, Vice President of Medical, Academic, and Research Affairs at Horizon Health. He failed to state one other that I'll get to later. All of these diseases start pretty much the same way, he added, with a bit of cognitive disorder, some strange muscle movements, and it's only over time that specialists can say that seems to be more to it. The symptoms for the disease include rapidly progressing dementia, muscle spasms, atrophy, memory loss, and hallucinations. 51% of the cases have involved women and 49% men, and the age range has been between 18 and 85. I know that many people in the province feel frustrated, and I understand that, said Shepherd, acknowledging that the families of some victims have complained that the government is doing a poor job of sharing information. The provincial health department says the first case of the disease dates back to 2015. But a potential cluster of cases wasn't identified by federal officials until December 2020. Shepherd said, pay attention, Shepherd said that the federal Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, CJD, surveillance system spotted a pattern of symptoms among patients last year and then ruled out the possibility that the syndrome was a human prion disease like CJD. Ka-ching! Chronic wasting disease in moose, deer, elk has been something I've been talking about for a long time. And you are not alone in not paying attention. The press doesn't care. Nobody seems to care, but it is the most devastating issue in our wildlife in our lifetime, bar none. And it is going to cross over and infect us. Let me read on. News of the unknown syndrome first emerged through a March 5th memo from the province's Deputy Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Christian Weck, to various medical professionals in New Brunswick. At the time of their referrals, most of the existing patients were living in and around Moncton, New Brunswick, and the Acadian Peninsula in northeastern New Brunswick. But there's no hard evidence to suggest the syndrome is linked to geography. Shepard declined to be more specific when asked to describe where the patients are from. They're not just from these two secluded areas, she said. It would be short-sighted to cite targeting areas. Last week, the province opened a special clinic for patients. It's a neurodegenerative disorder clinic located at the Moncton Hospital, as well as the Horizon Health Clinic launched a website. In March, a researcher for the Public Health Agency of Canada said a potential cause could be some kind of environmental exposure. Michael Coulthart, the head of the Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease surveillance system, said many neurological disorders have features that overlap, but he said he has not seen anything like the New Brunswick cluster before. He said the fact that the cases have been spread over a number of years will make it more difficult to pinpoint. Now, this is from 2013, the Nova Scotia Federation of Anglers and Hunters. Here it is. Part of a committee's mandate is to provide second opinions and to rule out potential causes. We have faith that this diligence will pay off, Shepard said. Dr. Edward Hendricks, one of the committee's co-chairs, said the 9-member group is facing a tough challenge. Hold on. Wow. So this is from the Deer Busters Canada. Chronic wasting disease could harm humans, experts warn. A deadly disease that has affected the deer population in an estimated 24 states and 2 Canadian provinces could eventually spread to and infect humans, experts warn. This is February 15th, 2019. Speaking at the Minnesota State Capitol last week, experts from the University of Minnesota told lawmakers of the dangers of chronic wasting disease, or what the U.S. Geological Survey describes as a fatal neurological illness occurring in northern cervids, deer, elk, moose, including white-tailed deer, mule deer, elk, and moose. Currently, there are no vaccines or treatments available for the disease, which scientists say spreads directly through animal-to-animal contact, but also indirectly through contaminated drinking water and food. Let me explain this to you. When one of these animals gets this disease, it is spread through its urine. It's a prion disease. A prion is something that's smaller than a virus. And when it comes out of the system and it goes over plants and the urine spreads over the ground, and other animals come along and eat that, if they're susceptible to the prions, that's how they catch it and that's how it's spread. Now, it can be spread animal to animal, and a prion disease is what caused mad cow disease in the United Kingdom. And when mad cow first came out, the authorities in the UK told the citizens that it would never spread animal to human. And what did it do? It spread animal to human. And in this instance, when CWD, chronic wasting disease, also a prion disease, just a different type for a different animal, was found, the different state fish and game districts are advising other hunters not to eat the meat of these diseased animals. Well, how do you do that? Well, you take certain parts of the animal, you submit it to Fish and Game for testing, and then if it comes back clean, then you eat it. But what's not happening is hunters aren't getting their animals tested. A horrendously horrible decision on the part of hunters. Prion disease, CWD, it's in many states. Just Google chronic wasting disease and check your own state's Fish and Game website, and they usually have a map there. Montana, it's getting worse every day. It's bad. Coming from the north, coming from Canada, and it's coming from the south. And Wyoming, about 80% of the state is covered right now. It's horrible. And there's many, many other states that are in horrific states. And most fish and game have no strategy, which is the bad part. If you have no strategy, what are you going to do? They have found that certain deer and certain elk with certain genetic characteristics are more resilient to the prions. And they're working on that part of it. But in reality, there's no strategy. And like I said, this is the worst thing to happen to our wildlife in our lifetime, and nobody's paying attention. Now, Fredericton, New Brunswick, and Moncton, New Brunswick are the two center points of this. And I'm going to show you something. Here's Fredericton and here's Moncton. Just as a little keynote here. It's 160 miles from these locations to Oak Island, the TV show. And the Bay of Fundy is right here. All of this area is infected heavily by this disease that they know nothing about. And it's spreading right now. Now, what's interesting is there was an incident at Shag Harbor years ago, 1967. Shag Harbor UFO incident. I'm going to talk to you about it a little bit. And on that same day that they saw something at Shag Harbor, they saw something right off the coast right here, between the lighthouse here and the point of this ship in the water right here. I'm going to read you the UFO report from the RCMP. Now, most of you don't know this. When the RCMP get a UFO report, they drop everything and take it. It's considered top secret. They write up their report, it goes to Ottawa. What do our police officers do? They don't even care. Now, the RCMP are the National Police Force for Canada. Closest thing we have is the FBI. But Canada takes their UFO reports super seriously. And I've got a couple of RCMP friends who have explained this to me in detail. It's not played with, it's serious. Now, this is a report. It's dated October 7th, 1967. Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Gendarme Royal du Canada. The division is Halifax. It says on this date, a request was received from Halifax Subdivision Section to contact Captain Lee Howard Mercy of the MV Nickerson, a ship, relative to a sighting of a flying object off Sambro Lighthouse on October 4th, 67. It was further requested that the results of the inquiries be forwarded to the Barrington Passage Department in view of the similar sighting in that area. Captain Mercy was interviewed and the following statement obtained. At 9 p.m. here's a statement. At about 9 p.m. on October 4th, 67, I noted an object with 3 flashing red lights. Radar on the ship indicated this object to be 16 miles away. It was very clear that night, and we could see the lights of Halifax. At the time, our boat was 32 miles south of Sambro Lighthouse, and the object was approximately 16 miles northeast of us. I would say the object was 16 miles southeast of Sambro. At times, the Navy do a lot of practicing in this area. At the same time, there were 3 other objects on radar at about 6 miles from the first object. I would say it disappeared at about 11 p.m. when it went up, straight up in the air. I could not see any shape or form to it because of the distance. When it went into the air, it only had 1 flashing light. While the object was on the water, or close to the water, it had 3 real bright red lights. All the lights on it were red. I could not see any lights on the other 3 objects as they were only appearing on radar. It is not unusual to see the Navy or aircraft dropping things into the water there. I'd never seen anything like that before, but it sounds like the thing that they were looking for down off of Sherbourne or Barrington Passage. When the object left, it went straight up in the air with only 1 red light. A note from the RCMP, Captain Mercy, M-E-R-S-C-Y, is considered a reliable type individual and bears a good reputation in the community. Barrington Passage Detachment were advised of the foregoing via telephone, and a copy of the report is being forwarded direct to their information center. Why do I tell you this? Well, first of all, in 2004, Commander Fravor from the NABS Hornets fighter group saw an object just off the water shoot straight up into the air, multicolored. Yeah. And I pay attention to this kind of stuff because only a fool wouldn't. So one more time. So this is Halifax over here, the Sambro Lighthouse. Here's the Nickerson. And somewhere between here and here, that UFO is seen, which to me places it almost right off of Oak Island. Here's Shag Harbor that also saw an object in the water and take off. This is the US-Canadian border. Maine, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia. 160 miles away, and actually probably more like 80 miles away when you're talking right here, because this is the area that's infected. Now, is it all related? I don't know. But if you don't look at peripheral issues, then you're an idiot. I just wanted to tell that to you. Canada takes their stuff very seriously. There's their report. So that's what's in the news right now in my world. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about a cluster in Australia. Very unusual one. And lately it's been in the news for a couple of reasons that I'm going to explain their mistake. But the region we're going to talk about here is right here. Here's Melbourne, not Melbourne. I learned that in Australia. This is the Woonongata Station, and we're going to talk about this area of Australia, far southern part. First case. David Prideaux. I wrote about this in Missing 411 Hunters, June 5th, 2011, 4:30 p.m., right near Mount Sterling, which is in the, from Woonongata Station, it's about 16 miles west. So David Prideaux was a super interesting guy. This incident happened on the northeast fringe of Alpine National Park. I bring this up time and again because national parks play a part, whether international or national. There's a lot of theories about why these are happening in national parks, but they are. And it also happened, David disappeared 10 miles from Lake Eildon, E-I-L-D-O-N. So David was raised in just outside of Melbourne. He was one of 6 kids, and he had an older brother named Peter. And Peter was the warden at a famous prison called Pentridge. While David was a locksmith, his brother was a prison warden. Well, it closed in 97, and it was a supermax prison. And David got into corrections and slowly started to rise through the ranks. Well, David was married, had 2 kids, lived outside of Melbourne. In 2011, he was the warden at a place called Barwon in Geelong, Barwon, another supermax prison. And all the prisoners at the time from Pentridge went to Geelong. So it was kind of strange that one family member took over for another family member. Well, on June 4th, David liked to hunt, and he loaded up his Land Cruiser full of his hunting equipment, and he drove to pick up his brother-in-law, Peter Campbell, and picked Peter up. Peter got in the Land Rover, put all his stuff, and they drove to Mount Sterling. And they got there, and June 5th, about 8:15, they had breakfast, they got up, they started to walk down a road, dirt road, and Peter said that they split. One went one direction, one went another direction, point of separation. Peter came back to camp and had lunch, didn't think much about it. And the camp they set up was at Tomahawk Hut. Peter got his stuff together, went back out and hunted, came back at 4:30. David still wasn't there, hadn't heard anything. But he had a VHF radio, and he tried to reach David on it a couple of times, couldn't. And he didn't have cell reception, so he left and he hiked a couple miles till he could, and then he called David on the cell phone and said, "It's getting late, you need to come back." Nothing came in. Well, the vehicle that they came in was locked. Peter couldn't get in it, so he had to hike out and get some help. And he got his cell phone, hiked back to the same location the next morning, called for assistance. I'm sorry, that same night he called for assistance. And he realized that the phone he was calling to David on was inside his car. Well, Mansfield, Australia police arrived that night, about 9:30 p.m., and they started a search and rescue mission. And that night they turned on the lights and sirens of the police car. Peter fired off 3 rounds, nothing came back. And on June 6th, it started to rain, and then it started to snow. Well, they brought in canines from multiple jurisdictions, and the corrections service sent their canines, tracking dogs. Nothing. 3 to 5 feet of snow fell in the following days. That's a lot. And they kept sending in canine teams. No scent was picked up. This is in a cluster zone, but at the time I wrote the article, it wasn't. But it's quickly became that, strangely. The search was so thorough that David was wearing some new camo clothing. And a receipt from one of those camo clothing apparently came out of his pocket, and they found it. Now that's thorough. But David was never found. There were a lot of theories about this. One theory is that some gang from his prison went out there and got him and killed him. So let me tell you, gangs in prisons may be real adept at moving across the streets, but they're not too adept at moving through mountains and not being seen. And these mountain roads, you got to cross a lot of people to get to a spot, and you're going to be seen. So nothing unusual was spotted up there. No gunshots were heard. No, I don't believe it was gangs. There was another rumor that David was seen months later in some town miles away. I hear that all the time about missing people. There was never any proof of that. David Prideaux was never found. At 50 years old, he was in good health. If he died, cadaver dog should have picked up his scent miles away. Didn't. So what happened to him? Well, as you're going to see, he is only one, but many in that area that have gone missing. David Prideaux. Case number 2, Niles Becker. Niles was 39 years old, lived with his parents. He was a writer. And should I get this adjusted a little better for you? He was a poet, and he was a good-hearted soul. He was going to turn 39, and 6 months before, he decided he was going to try to do a backpacking excursion. And so he started training and walking around town with heavy backpack, getting himself in shape, just doing what you should be doing. He loved jazz music, folk, and Christian country music. Religion was important to him. His parents were named Pierre and Johanna, and they lived in a city called Hampton. And he left the day before his birthday, October 24th, 2019. He texted his parents on October 24th, and he said he was at a place called Upper Jamerson Hut. And he was saying at that point that he was going to go to a place called Vallejo Gantner Hut. And he texted them on October 26th saying he was there. And he also said that he wanted to summit Mount Sterling. Sound familiar? So, parents understood, wished him good luck, and that was the last anybody heard of him. Parents said he was very thoughtful, always kept him in touch, and that's exactly what you should be doing, is keeping somebody in touch who you care about and love. Well, from the hut to Mount Sterling should be about a 6 to 7 hour hike. And when David didn't return, his parents called for search and rescue. They found his car where they thought he'd be, and they went to the huts with canines. Well, now Mount Sterling is 1,749 meters in height, or about 5,738 feet. And it's right on the fringe of Alpine National Park. Again, keep that in mind. And there's a ski area on Mount Sterling. Well, 5,738 feet. You know, I've been on 12, 14,000 foot mountains all my life. And to me, that's not a big mountain, but in that area, that's a big mountain. So I respect that. Well, 70 searchers, multiple dog teams, searched for 7 days. And they had a start point. They had the hut as a start point. They knew he was there. And sometimes they don't have that ability with dogs, but they did. Well, the searchers were hampered by bad weather. Canines couldn't pick up a scent. And now we've been through one entire rotation of seasons. And still, Niles has never been found, nor anything related to him. His backpack, his camping gear, nothing. So you got weather, you got a cluster zone, you got canines not picking up a scent, and you got one of the biggest lakes in the area very close, about 10 miles away. It's a dam. Suspicious. Definitely. Niles Becker, his parents are distraught. I wish somebody would help. The next case involves a man named Conrad Whitlock, 72 years old, missing July 29th, 2019. So remember, Niles Becker disappeared in October 2019, Conrad in July, 72 years old. He lived in Sandhurst, southeast of Melbourne. He loved rally racing. He and his wife she'd be the navigator, he'd be the driver. And they did the Targa rally in Tasmania. And they love that kind of stuff. Well, Conrad was a wealthy businessman, super successful. And he owned a company called Whitlock Bull Bars, B-U-L-L, bars. 50 employees, they still exist. And if you go to Facebook, you'll find them. They make some great bars that go on the front of these trucks and things to protect them. 50 employees. So in the time before Conrad disappeared, he was suffering headaches. And he had a scheduled MRI later in the week on the day he disappeared. He and his wife had been married for 52 years. Well, on the night of July 29th, 2019, Mandy, his wife, said that they went to sleep just like they always did. No big deal. And she woke up at 6 a.m. the next morning and he was gone. And she goes, it was highly, highly unusual. He would never do that. Nothing was unusual the night before. Well, at 6 a.m. that same morning, RCMP find a BMW parked on the road to Mount Sterling in an area between the base of the mountain and the ski resort, in an area where nobody parks, and they knew it was weird. And so they were running the license number, trying to figure out what was wrong, what the person was doing there. Well, she said, yeah, my husband's missing now. And they start searching. And rain and snow started falling almost immediately. The car was found about 20 kilometers from the nearest town. And the search centered on a town, and I'll spell it, Merrijig. They brought in canines, they had some air support, a lot of ground pounders. There were rumors in the following weeks that Conrad was seen walking the roads in khaki pants, but that was never confirmed. Now, when the police got there, they found his keys, his phone, and his coat in the car. And the coat was a danger sign to him because it was a cold area at that time of year, especially at night. So, the profile points that key on. So, weather, because it rained and snowed during the search. This is a cluster zone. I'm naming off the cases here. We've named off 3. Canines never picked up a scent, and similar cases in the area, and a huge dam in that area. So, another case where the man was never found. Now, Conrad's case reminded me right away of a case out of Ohio, where a man got up in the middle of the night, left, and was never seen again. And I'll put the link to that video on the pinned comment for this video. If you look under the description and or the pinned comment, you'll find it. Now, this is his car. This is the area it was found in. Just pulled off to the shoulder of the road. This is Conrad. Couple of things. Headaches. To me, that can mean a lot. Does that mean he has a medical condition, a mental condition? Does that mean that something's attacking him that we don't understand? A lot of weird things could be going on. But for him to leave before he ever got diagnosed and disappear, what would cause him to just take off? Not tell his wife of 52 years. Highly strange. Something I'll never understand. Conrad. Next case. This one has gotten tons of press in Australia. Carol Clay and Russell Hill. Carol Clay 73, Russell Hill 74. Described as one of the most confusing cases in Australia. Carol was from a town called Pakenham. Russell from a town called Druin. Both those are just on the east side of Melbourne. And these two had been having a long time affair on their spouses. Russell Hill was a former logger and knew this area that they went into, which was just west of where the other 3 people disappeared. I'm going to talk about this area in detail in a second. But Russell contacted friends nightly via a shortwave radio that he had on this specially built truck. He was somebody who knew the area that they went into like you know your backyard, because he had logged it for years. Now, Carol was a super well-known businesswoman, former president of the County Women's Association, and was a stand-up person in everyone's mind. So they went into an area, they parked their truck, and they set up a tent, and Russell set up a special tent for Carol with a little potty inside. So they had 2 different tents with the truck parked next to it. Well, the last known contact was March 20th when Russell spoke to a friend. Now, Carol told people she was going to be back on the 29th. And that was the expectation. Well, on the 26th of March, people had driven by and saw their campsite intact. Other people went by late at night on the 26th and saw it burned up. So, Russell and Carol. Now this is, what I'm going to show you next is confusing at best. Russell's truck. This is the outhouse tent that Russell put up for Carol. And this is the tent. And I've never seen anything like that. Important pieces. You notice the charring on the side of the truck here and here, but not here and not here. And the charring didn't melt the tire, so it didn't get too hot, and it didn't cause the tire to rupture. But all of this area was still charred, almost in straight lines on the ground. Highly unusual. Arson investigators came out and they couldn't determine what caused the fire. And I've only heard of that maybe a 1/10 of 1% of all arsons. Very rare. So there's some mystery with this. But they kept digging deeper. Russell had a drone. The drone was missing. Russell also had 2 sleeping bags in the tent. Both those were missing. And the bathroom had never been used. Now they got there on the 20th and Russell called and said everything was good. But under the circumstances I just explained, I would say that they never spent a night in that tent based on lack of use of the bathroom. Now, men, hey, maybe we wouldn't use the bathroom. Maybe we just walk around the corner and use a tree. But Carol is going to use that. And she didn't. So something happened. Now they brought in scent dogs and cadaver dogs. They didn't pick up any scent. And they didn't pick up any body smells later. And they did this for weeks. The gap in time is between the 20th when Russell contacted a friend and said everything was fine, and the 26th when they found the campground burned. Searchers said that rain hampered the search, and the keys were in the ignition to the truck. Key point. Why is that? Well, the sleeping bags were missing. So maybe the theory would be that, hey, they put some sleeping bags on some backpacks and they backpacked into the woods to spend a night or two and something happened out there. No. Carol would not be the type to go backpacking. And Russell probably wouldn't either, and they didn't find any packs and they didn't know that he brought any packs. That's number one. Number two, his truck was recently outfitted the way he wanted it. He would not have left the keys in the ignition and walked away and spent the night someplace else. Not going to happen. So, it did happen. Now, this case, so I'll go through it one more time. This is in a woodsy environment, toilet never used, fire in the tent, charring on the vehicle, although it's drivable, and sleeping bags missing. Strange case. But, in my humble opinion, this is criminal. I believe that Carol and Russell were probably murdered. And I think the drone had something to do with it. Maybe, possibly, I mean, I've talked about this with several friends. Somebody came up with this theory and I thought it was pretty good. Is that maybe Russell was flying the drone after they got there and he saw something, flew the drone over by it, and somebody got mad and shot the drone down. Came over and said, hey, what are you doing? And there was a confrontation, and there were some people that said that Russell was somebody that would stand his ground. Well, if that's the point, and maybe they had to, these people harmed Russell, then they figured they had to harm Carol as well. Well, there's a dam that you have to pass en route to this area. And there's a camera on the side of the dam. And everybody is on video going past that. And the Australian police definitely know who was in that valley and they're following up. My theory is that they're working the case right now, trying to make a case on somebody. And they're trying to find the bodies. So, this is an important map. I'm going to get this so you can see it pretty good. So, right here, you have Niles Becker. Right here, you have Conrad Whitlock and David Prideaux, all in close proximity. Mount Buller is right here. Mount Sterling right here. Now, 16 miles away, you have Russell and Carroll. Now, Russell and Carroll were at a place called Wanangata Station, and they were camping along a river. And they weren't right on the river, but they were close to it. And it was the Dargo River. This area right here is really desolate. So, this is the overview map. Wanangata over here. Kind of give you the view of what it's like, and the up close view of what happened. So, you have 5 people, 4 men and 1 woman that have vanished. Prideaux hunting, Becker hiking, Whitlock abandons at a car in the middle of nowhere. 2 people camping in the middle of nowhere disappear under those strange burning conditions. What's going on? Well, I do believe that this area has some strangeness to it. No doubt. But the truth of the matter is that only a few of the cases, these 3 right here, Whitlock, Becker, and Prideaux, are the ones that really stand out in my mind. I don't think that law enforcement wants to show their hand on Carroll and Russell's case. I mean, it's been just a little over a year, and they probably do have some suspects who aren't talking right now. And I do hope that that case gets closed quickly. The more time that goes on, the more chance that these bad people won't get caught. But that is the Wanangata area cluster, Mount Sterling, Mount Buller, and the families of the missing, no answers. But I hope to get to Australia. If I do, I want to go to this area. I'd like to see this Sterling and Buller region. And I can't imagine being married to somebody for 52 years and in the middle of the night they get up and leave and you don't even know. You wake up in the morning and they're gone. That's horrific. Never have any words to say to them. No explanation as to what happened. Horrible. But if you could please give the video a thumbs up, I appreciate it. We need to build our base and build the people that follow us. So if you could please put this on your social media, I'd be greatly appreciated. And you can follow me on Twitter, David Paulides at Canam Missing, and I'm also on Facebook. You guys have been a real gem. I think this has been an important case to cover here, important cluster for the reasons I described. Also, it helps you understand the thinking process behind how a case gets included and not. Just because the Clay and Russell case had weather and a lot of strange things, you have to have a method to the madness and follow an exact path of investigation to truly understand if a case falls within our realm or not. Whatever happened to Carroll and Russell was probably really bad. So, thanks again. We'll see you next week.